Let's go through some ways that you can start making money as a beginner photographer or someone who just wants to get serious about photography. We'll also talk about some fundamental mindset things that will really help you out. Okay, in a majority of cases, a company can shoot the content they need themselves, technically, except you need to remember that in most small businesses, the most scarce resource isn't money, it's actually time. So instead of pitching yourself as an expert with all the best gear and all the best expertise, treat that as a given and focus on ways that you can save people time. And this goes for when you're trying to find jobs. As a beginner, stop thinking about who needs photos and start thinking about who is taking lots of photos and probably doesn't have time to be doing that. You know, just off the top of my head, you're thinking car sales, small hotels, boutique retail and shops, people with products. They're out there taking hundreds of photos every day and they probably don't have time to be doing it. You can go and help them do that. Next, we have events photography. Events photography is a great place for beginners to cut their teeth because it's less about the technical photography and more about your ability to be on your feet for a long time, work a long day, and pick out those moments that you see happening, which means being in the right place at the right time. All the while, you can be learning the technical side of photography to progress. Most people think of corporate events, which is kind of a good place to start, you know, these big conferences and things like that, but don't discount all the local events that happen around you. These local events are generally run by committees and have Facebook pages or are linked to town and parish councils, and they're often looking for people to cover the events that they put on. You can then use that experience to move into formal event space, corporate events, or wedding photography that requires much more experience. The gear that you need for this, I'd say, would be a camera with a kit zoom lens, maybe a 28-70 on a full frame or an 18-55 for a crop sensor, because you need to be able to pick out those moments and zoom in, but then switch to a wide angle in a pinch if you need to get a scene. How can you get better at it? Well, I think if you practice street photography in a busy area, you'll get good at picking out those moments where somebody's enjoying it or they're engaging and when they're looking photogenic. That's probably a good way to get used to photographing people in a crowd. The next one, and I was reluctant to put this on the list, and I'll explain why, but it's aerial photography. You see, as a beginner photographer, you kind of need to sidestep experienced photographers and do the things that they don't want to do. And many of these photographers won't deviate too much from their chosen discipline. So picking something quite new, you know, within the last decade, like aerial photography, is a good thing to do. And some aerial photography is actually very simple since the camera is basically automatic and the compositions are pretty limited. The skills that you need for this are also not technical photography skills that take years to develop. And the other thing is to buy a drone capable of taking good photos could cost about £500 to £700 instead of the kind of £3,000 to £5,000 you need to get a good camera and a good lens. Now, there are obviously established aerial photography companies out there, but I still think there is more demand for this type of photography, particularly in the low cost end, you know, a cheaper drone taking less high resolution pictures, for example. But as I said, I nearly didn't add this because in many regions, the licenses and qualifications you need can be a barrier and can cost money. But where there are barriers, there are less people. So maybe consider that barrier as a possible route in. You know, check out your local laws and local qualifications that you're going to need, but don't get yourself in trouble, okay? The gear that you need is a drone. I would say a DJI Mini 2 or 3 would be a great start, and you can get one of those pretty cheap nowadays. How can you improve? Just get really good at controlling that drone. So practice in your garden, and I think the rest is going to take care of itself because the real power in aerial photography is getting the camera in the sky. The next one is Airbnb photography. Now, interiors photography is hard. I know this because I do it all the time. I've been doing it for years, maybe 10, 15 years. But taking better pictures than an Airbnb host is actually pretty simple. The best way to go about this is hop onto Airbnb, make a list of all of the places that have photos that you think you can do better than, figure out which ones of those have websites and, you know, Instagram pages, Facebook pages, because it's not a good idea to contact someone through Airbnb. Then make them an offer that they can't refuse. If you keep doing that, build a portfolio, keep improving and build relationships, and voila, down the line, you're now an experienced interiors photographer. If you don't have a portfolio of any kind, Maybe you can think about, going to a friend's house who's got a nice house and it's always tidy. Ask them if you can take a few pictures. Or maybe you know someone who has an Airbnb and you can offer them some photos in exchange to build out your portfolio. And another great one is if you want to go on a weekend break, obviously if you're going to be doing that anyway, hire a nice Airbnb, consider it a bit of an investment and take a whole bunch of photos of it and use that for your portfolio. The gear that you'll need, normally a camera with a wide angle lens. For me, I use a 16-35, which I will link down below. That's my bread and butter, that lens. If you're a total beginner, I think you could get away with this on a phone if it's got a wide lens. I have done Airbnb shots with a phone before and the person has been very, very happy. How to get better at it, watch videos on interior photography compositions and editing. I actually have a few videos of my own on my photography channel, which I will link below. And the other thing that you can do is get hold of some interior design magazines and flick through them when you're on the job. It's a great way of finding inspiration for those compositions because composition in interiors photography is actually hard because it's not very intuitive. The next way that a beginner photographer can get an upper hand is get good at short videos. You would be surprised how many businesses right now need short, vertical videos. Many of them just want short, individual shots so they can edit into videos. But I hear you say, Johnny, I want to be a photographer, not a videographer. But for me personally, I feel this kind of short, vertical video is actually closer to photography than it is videography. You're going to be doing short, well-composed shots, so you're going to have to learn about composition and light so that the person can take all these little shots and edit them into any number of videos in the future. It's something that you can add to your package to give you something extra to offer, and it requires nothing more than a mobile phone. In many types of photography, don't sleep on this, okay? Many people I work with are prioritizing this at the moment. They come to me for photos, but the thing they get the most value out of is the short vertical videos, purely because this is getting the most reach on social media. The gear that you'll need, a phone. It's very useful if your phone has a wide lens, but really just a phone can get the job done. How to get better at it. Watch loads of reels, TikToks, shorts, and save anything that is working in your niche. Refer to it for those compositions and the things that are working. Add that to your packages and I think you're going to make yourself a much more hireable photographer as a beginner. Some of my subscribers might be wondering why I'm not posting my photography adventures anymore. The truth is I am posting them. I'm posting them to a different channel, which I'll leave a link to below. I've got a good reason for it, but I'm not going to go into that right now. I'll probably make another video on that. But anyway, let's carry on. Now the next curveball I'm going to throw at you is get good at AI or get familiar with AI. This isn't so much about making money, but it's about protecting yourself, but also maybe finding that route in that's brand new. I hate to say this, but AI imagery is here much sooner than I thought it would be. I made a video about 5 months ago about how years down the line it's going to be able to do these things that it can do today. Now I can't say this for sure, but my gut tells me that if I was getting started in photography right now, I would stop thinking of myself as someone that captures images and start thinking of myself as someone that provides images, however the best way to do that is. That probably makes you uncomfortable, much like digital photography did years ago. Now, I'm not saying focus on AI. I'm saying, know your enemy, better the devil you know. In films where the baddie turns out to be not so bad and eventually becomes an ally, I think that's AI. And the advancement of AI, particularly in photography replacement, is moving alarmingly fast. I mean, in a year. So imagine in 5 years. Are you building a career in photography? Get to know AI and understand what it's capable of so that you can either navigate around it or use it. The next one is product photography for social media. This has been popular for a while and I would say we're probably past its peak, but it's a great way to learn about photography and maybe earn some money along the way. Brands are always looking for more social media content and I'll be honest, they don't have a shortage of this, of people that are willing to do it for nothing. But if your shots are good and there are enough of them, they will likely be open to either buying the shots or sending you products to photograph maybe their new thing that they're launching. Professionals and people who do this all the time will have a workflow and relationships built up already, but this is great for beginners because you probably already have the products from brands that you're passionate about and would like to work with. So what you can do is you can go out, practice, try and mimic some of the professional shots, and then you can post them to social media, mention the brands, and when those brands react, you can start a conversation. It might take time, but if you can do this the right way, they will likely respond and you will maybe have a way to work with these brands. The other thing that you can do is use these products and the shots that you're taking to work with brands adjacent to those, maybe some small startup brands, just like the big brands that you aspire to work with. The gear that you'll need for this, probably just a camera and a kit lens to start. A macro lens would be very good for small product photography like rings, jewelry, those sorts of things. And maybe a 50mm prime lens for isolating medium-sized products or people just slightly out in front of you. I'll link some recommendations for those products below. How to get good though. Follow the brands you're passionate about. Understand their marketing language. Practice with the products that you have and watch YouTube videos about product photography. I think if you're passionate about photography, you probably have the tools necessary to get started with this one. There are many, many more ways that you can make money with photography. The ones I've mentioned here are great for beginners. But if you want to carry on learning some great ways that you can make money as a photographer, check out this video next. I made it a while ago, but I think most of it is still totally relevant.